America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Back in better than ever, Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And put the word in the street, people, it's a football Friday. Rookie quarterback setting the world on fire. We'll talk about it. Plus, Nick Saban responds to Josh Rosen. And don't expect to see Kyrie Irving traded anytime soon, at least not as soon as we thought. Those and more on a jam-packed Friday. Golic are ready to do this.
Oh, absolutely. Nice slate of games last night. 7 preseason games, and we had just come off the game Wednesday night of Carolina and Houston, a couple of rookies in Deshaun Watson and Christian McCaffrey, and talking about how well Watson played. And I guess Mitch Trubisky took that to heart and said, well, okay, if he played well, I'm going to try and one-up him a bit. And, boy, he sure did.
You know what's hilarious is that even the most educated of football fans will have this reaction. We all know these games don't really mean anything. They don't count, but they matter. You want to see good things. It's the first preseason game. Trubisky, in this case last night, is going up against reserves and playing with reserves. Yeah. And yet we will react overwhelmingly. If he had looked terrible last night,
we'd have crushed him.
We would have said, you see, they should have taken Deshaun Watson. And instead, we're basically saying the Bears have finally found the quarterback they've been looking for since Sid Luckman.
And while I'm not going to go that far, I absolutely understand your point. Because there'll be many people who are going to say, well, let's ease up. You know, he was a third quarterback in, went in before half, a nice 2-minute drill, a nice second half. We'll get into all the numbers and how we played and such. But it was against guys who won't be in the league. Okay, that's fine. But all he could do was go up against the guys he went up against. And he was fantastic. He showed a lot of the things he showed in his very limited time in North Carolina with accuracy and completions in a row, which we'll get into. So that's all we can judge him on. And if we would have crushed him if he airmailed some balls, then we're going to talk well about him when he did well. The competition will get better. He'll play against that going through the preseason. We'll see. As you'll hear, John Fox said the depth chart's not changing, but all he can do is play the plays he's supposed to play and let the chips fall where they may. And he looked very, very good last night. Right,
and for those of us whose job it is to react, we have two options. One is the reasonable, calm-headed, it's just the first preseason game reaction. And the other is, oh, my God, this guy looks fantastic. And personally, I vote for the latter.
Off the top.
All right, let's go off the top. Dodgers win again. I feel like saying that we shouldn't even bother mentioning it anymore when they win. It's only news when they lose. The Dodgers are ridiculous.
They really are. They haven't lost a series since their June 5th to 7th series against the Nationals. All the other teams in the league have lost at least 6 series. They haven't lost a series since the beginning of June. And Yu Darvish, coming to the team, what has he done? Well, he became the 4th pitcher in modern baseball history, that's since 1900, to have at least 10 strikeouts in each of his first 2 starts with a team. So he gets traded over there. You wonder, because he was struggling, no doubt about that, leading up to this, and he has been money in his first 2 starts. Remember, they don't even have Clayton Kershaw back, and you really hope they're going to need Kershaw, you would think, to win the World Series, even though Kershaw hasn't been great in the postseason. But imagine him coming back healthy with what they have right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the Darvish thing, you can't help but wonder if the weight of possibly being traded was on him. His last start before he got dealt, he just fell apart completely, and now he's been, as you mentioned, money
off the top,
in an LA uniform. All right, Jordan Spieth trying to win some money and make some history this weekend at Quail Hollow. It did not start extraordinarily well for him. Spieth won over after 1 round of the PGA.
Yeah, he's won over Rory McIlroy, who the favorite was in this tournament. Rory was the favorite, and then Spieth was next. Again, we know what Spieth's trying to do, become the 6th player for the career, in hitting the career in all the majors. He could have been the youngest. He will be the youngest if he's able to do it. But he made back-to-back birdies on 7 and 8 to go 1 over where he would finish. He was never won an official event after posting an opening round score over par. It's Kevin, is it Kisner? I'm not going to lie. Don't even know. And Thorbjorn Olsen.
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 Who I happen to have on DraftKings.
Do you really?
Yes.
Do you really?
I needed someone to fit the money slot into which he fits.
Really?
So I actually have him as part of my group on DraftKings. Go Olsen.
Here you go. 27-year-old from Denmark, 5 international wins. This is his first lead following any round of any PGA Tour. He made 14 of 4, and here's where you win, gang. 14 of 14 putts inside of 10 feet.
He's going to win us some money this week. I told
Steve,
that's
buy him a car. Fantastic.
We sat around and picked out our lineup the other day.
Maybe I'll get his name right at some point.
The NBA has released its schedule for the opening night and the opening week and Christmas Day, and there are very few surprises. It's loaded with Golden State and Cleveland.
Yeah, as well it should be in this. It's going to be what the Warriors and Cavaliers are meeting on Christmas for the third straight year. By the way, Christmas with LeBron and the family, 11th year now he'll be playing on Christmas Day.
Sure.
11, and certainly that's what you do. You know,
when you're the biggest star in the sport, you play on Christmas.
That's what happens. They should just send him, sorry, LeBron, every year, you know, send wherever you're going to be, you know, wherever
his family celebrates Christmas on a different day.
That's exactly right. And it's okay.
They're used to it. The kids have to be used to it by now. They've never been. Every once in a while, I guess they're at home.
Right, exactly.
But this year they go to Golden State because the Warriors got the win, and to the winner
off the top.
goes the spoils. Speaking of basketball, and we'll have Woj in here a little bit later this morning, the Knicks and the Rockets are talking again about Carmelo.
Talking again, and really this is the only team Carmelo is going to waive the no-trade clause for, so that kind of puts the Knicks in a little bit of a box. We'll talk to Wojo about this. They need a third team involved to make all the money work. Not going to bore anybody with all the facts about that. Bottom line is that's where Carmelo wants to go. That makes it a narrow channel for the Knicks to try and get something done.
Yeah, I mean, you're threading a needle there with him. And unlike the Kyrie Irving thing where the Cavaliers have a very reasonable option of just keeping him, the Knicks don't, which is to say they could keep Carmelo, but it really doesn't make any sense for them. I've never really thought it made any sense for him. They could try and call his bluff and say, look, we don't have a deal here. You can play another year on this young rebuilding team, or give us another team or two you might be willing to talk about.
Up a bit,
and I have no idea what his reaction would be to that.
No clue.
So we'll find out. And then finally, of course, all the preseason action headlined by Mitchell Trubisky. Let's make that off the top, presented by Progressive Insurance, where they'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. You used the expression the perfect storm earlier this week in relation to something else. And I don't know why. I mean, it's obviously not that I've never heard it before, but it is stuck in my head this week. And we've had a lot of those this week. And the one in Chicago last night was the ideal one. So you've got Mike Glennon, who is the highly paid for 1 year free agent quarterback that the Bears bring in, and the fans are completely unenthusiastic about it. He winds up going up against one of the best defenses in football in Denver. He throws a pick six on the third play of the game.
Yep, that's an ugly pass.
And then once all of the reserves come into the game, Mitchell Trubisky, who the Bears mortgaged the future and traded up to get, winds up coming in and setting the world on fire.
Trubisky didn't go in second. Trubisky went in third. Mark Sanchez went in second there, so Trubisky came in third into this game.
So it's the perfect storm of circumstances for us to wake up this morning and say, well, obviously, the clock is now ticking on the Mitchell Trubisky era in Chicago.
But, you know, what you look at, again, if you want to look at the numbers, you know, that's just fine. The numbers were great, 18 to 25, 60-some yards, and a touchdown, a short touchdown pass as he was rolling left to Victor Cruz, which we'll break down a little bit. But it coincides with a bad outing by Glennon, who, by the way, who was the quarterback in Tampa Bay before the number one pick in the draft?
It was Glennon.
Simpson. Yeah. It was Glennon. Glennon goes to Chicago, thinks he has new life, and then all of a sudden there's a number two pick in the draft being a quarterback. So talk about deja vu for him. So that's really the key here. It would have been one thing if Trubisky looked like he did, but Glennon, who didn't play much, threw 8 passes if he was 6 of 8. You know, for 50 yards or whatever, and looked fine.
But he
was 2 of 8. He had a 0. He had a Blutarski, you know, a grade point average for his quarterback rating. 2 of 8 with the pick six on the third play, as we talked about.
And it's a terrible throw.
It was a bad throw.
He throws it into triple coverage.
It was a bad throw. I had no idea where he was throwing it. I don't know if it was miscommunication again with the receiver or not. Then Trubisky comes in, especially at the end of the half. You got 1:55 to go in the half, and he leads him on a 50-yard drive. He leads them on a touchdown drive. At one point in his time out there, completes 10 in a row. Now, he's done that in college. I think he had 18 in a row in a game in college. He had a high percentage completion in college, certainly had a high percentage completion rate here as well. But, again, forgetting the numbers, he looked good. He looked poised. Just what I said about Deshaun Watson. And from the accuracy standpoint, we're talking about Watson having some off throws, but still looked good in what he was doing. Trubisky was throwing darts. I mean, he's a big kid, strong arm, can get the ball all over the place, and he was humming some darts out there and doing well. I ran a couple of times for some nice chunks as well. Can be a dangerous runner to move the change. But he's another one of those guys who you think of you always say a big, strong guy, pocket guy, but he can move. He's a really good athlete. He'll run just enough to hurt you, but he'll put the ball on the spot, and he's not afraid to throw it in there and in traffic, in coverage, and try and put on the money, and that's exactly what he did.
Look, he showed you, much as Foster did the night before. There's no guarantee. What did I say?
Foster?
Oh, Deshaun Watson, yeah.
Deshaun Watson,
much as Deshaun Watson did the night before. This doesn't mean they're going to be great players, and it certainly doesn't mean they're not going to have nights where they look like rookies.
Exactly.
Because they're going to.
Yeah.
But they showed you glimpses of why there was reason to be excited. Trubisky put on display for you last night all the things about him that scouts liked. The reason that he was going to be the number one quarterback taken in this draft, even though he's played as little as he has, because of the size and the arm strength and all that kind of thing, and the somewhat unexpected athleticism. And Watson had done it the night before. He looked just terrific the night before. I thought he looked terrific the night before, even if you did a nice breakdown of him yesterday. He missed a couple of throws.
Yeah, he did.
But that's going to happen.
Sure it is.
He put on display for you all the reasons to be excited about him, and Trubisky did exactly the same last night.
And the thing about Trubisky is look at the situations he was in. A 2-minute drive. Obviously just starting out his NFL career, a 2-minute drive of which he takes him 50 yards and throws the touchdown to Victor Cruz. Third quarter, a 75-yard drive, of which he's 5 for 5 for 50 yards. So it's not like just these hoisting big plays that he had. He played well. He had good sustained drives and all over the place, whether it was in the pocket, whether it was rolling right. And I think the coaches all do a nice job when they get these guys rolling a little bit as well to take half the field away and give them a little comfort out on the edge. But he rolled right, he rolled left, he stood in the pocket, he took some hits, he made the throws. He was a very, very accurate thrower. That impressed me the most, that you're throwing to the right guy, and then how are you getting it there? And you're putting it on the money. You're giving your receiver a chance. You're leading him well. You're throwing him open at times. He really, really looked good. I was very, very impressed. And I tell you, for all the trepidation of that management there, Ryan Pace had to be, at least right now, going, okay, the GM for the Bears saying, okay, that was a good start because they're taking a lot of guff. And listen, I was one of them. Not that I didn't think Mitchell at some point could be a good quarterback. I had said I would have taken Watson first, and I would not have taken Trubisky second. So Ryan Pace was catching and the team a lot of flack for that of, what's this guy going to turn into and all that. But you can breathe at least a sigh of relief now. It's early, but as we said before, if he airmailed a bunch of balls, we'd be crushing him today. He didn't. He played well. I don't care who it was against. All he can do is go in there and play against who he was going against. And he did extremely well. And it's more than the numbers. The numbers were fantastic if you want to look at them. But watching him, watching his feet, watching him roll left, watching him square up his shoulders while he's rolling left, which could be the most important thing when you're throwing the ball rolling left, rolling right, putting the ball on the money. It was really, and you know what he had, Greeny? He had command. He had command of that offense. The moment wasn't too big for him, and you never know what you're going to get. I thought with Deshaun Watson, you could expect more of a guy, even though it was his first NFL experience, a guy who would be able to handle the moment because he's played in monster games in college and a lot of them. With Trubisky, he hasn't. That's been the knock on him is, yes, he's got the arm. Yeah, he had the completion percentage. Yes, he had a string of completions records as well, but he only had 13 starts. What's he going to do when the NFL lights go on? And you know what? Game one, I'd say he checked a nice box.
I would say this. I'm going to be right. I just went back and found it. My tweet, April 27th. If the Bears believe in Trubisky, this was a great move. Glennon is a bridge. People will crush this move, but I like it. For one day, Greeny has redemption. All right, let's take a listen to what let's skip right to the Louis Riddick. Okay, so here, let me tell you quickly the other sound bites I was going to play for you. John Fox basically said, we're not changing the depth chart. Don't overreact.
Nor should
What's
they.
he going to say?
Nor should they shouldn't. You don't look at this game and say, oh, well, that's it. Because as he mentioned, now it's stuff to help the cause. He said, hey, Glennon's playing against the starters. That's a really good defense in Denver. And no doubt Glennon struggled. But no way now, what does it do in practice? Will it give, you start to get Trubisky more reps over Sanchez? I don't know how the split had been, so we'll see where that goes. But in no way, shape, or form, I completely agree. Are you changing the quarterback depth chart from the third stringer going to first stringer after one preseason game?
And then Trubisky himself said all the things you'd want him to say, which is he completely downplayed everything. And then Louis Riddick went on ESPN last night, and he said this.
Look great. Look, you want to see a guy operate at a very high level, Scott, at the things that you thought he could do well when you drafted him. People thought that Mitch Trubisky could roll out, change the launch point as far as where he throws the ball from, and he could get it out of his hand fast, and he could get it there accurately. And when you see a guy being able to sprint left, get his shoulders turned to the line of scrimmage, and then put it on the money, that's what you want. That's what he did at North Carolina. That's what he's doing here in Chicago. He doesn't have to have his feet set. Again, a quick flick of the wrist here, a three-step drop, a quick slant, putting it where the receiver can catch it and then protect himself. Those are the kind of things that you want to see. I know you just mentioned it. It's the first preseason game. Easy coverages, second and third teamers. But look, if the guy went out there and was airmailing stuff and throwing interceptions, then you'd be like, he stinks. We don't want to give him credit, but we would be ready to crush him. The guy's going to be starting. He's just going to be.
So, again, that was the plan. But remember, we heard that it was with Blake Bortles, correct? We heard that plan in Jacksonville that he's going to redshirt when they pick him in the first round. They're not going to play him, and they played him. And they said the same thing about Trubisky with bringing Glennon in. Glennon, again, is making $14, $15 million. Trubisky had 13 starts in college, so the thought was just sit him, let him learn. But the player is the one that can take care of that. Really, in this situation, it could be both. Because if Glennon was playing great, you wouldn't really be thinking about it right now. There has to be two sides of that. But with as well as Trubisky, it seems, played in this game. Again, we're not in practice to see what the coaches and everybody sees in practice. You start to move up the ranks a little bit, and then it starts to go down to, okay, how's the team doing? When do we start the clock ticking on this guy taking over the huddle? There's a lot of things that'll go into it.
Well, to the exact point you made, Louis Riddick, while this game was going on, tweeted, every plan is a good plan until it isn't. Yeah. Trubisky is not sitting all year. Yeah. No way. Yeah. I think, look, maybe the best case scenario is Glennon plays well. Let's not discount that possibility despite the fact that he went 2 for 8 last night. He threw a pick six on his third play, and on his third series, a snap went over his head.
Yeah, and that wasn't his fault, obviously.
Right.
We keep showing that when we talk about Glennon not playing well. The snap was nowhere near him. That was not his fault, yet we want to lump that in there with all the bad plays.
But the bottom line is he gets 3 drives, and that's, one of them. So that's why he winds up 2 for 8 with a 0, quarterback rating. But the reality of the situation is if the Bears are not going to be – there's a lot of things working in the direction of playing Trubisky this year. Mm-hmm. And one of them is job security. Like yesterday, ESPN.com listed – and look, John Fox has been around the block and back 10 times. So I'm not in any way suggesting he's doing something for his own job security. But the reality of it is – if this is a team that's not expected to compete for anything this year, if midway through the season Mike Glennon isn't setting the world on fire, probably the best thing you can do if he's not Christian Hackenberg and you're not afraid of putting him near the field,
and, where you
put the kid on the field, let him play, and if he's showing signs of developing, then that also doesn't do bad things for a coach's job security who's on the hot seat also.
Completely agree. A lot is going to be, obviously, as I said, there's more than just one thing here, but the main thing is they have to feel comfortable putting the player on the field. You brought up Hackenberg. I brought up Jared Goff, where obviously coaches didn't feel comfortable about putting these guys on the field. And that has more to do with what they're seeing in practice and what they'd seen in preseason. But here already, again, it's just week 1. It certainly looks to be going in a positive direction, as we saw last night for Trubisky. So, listen, I agree with you. A lot will have to do with Glennon. A lot will have to do with how the team is playing. But Trubisky, at least for last night, and this is what we do after a performance like that, is we say, okay, the clock may start ticking a little early.
All right, we're Mike and Mike, and we are asked every week by our friends at Sport Clips to pick an MVP moment of the week. Sport Clips, you watch sports, we cut hair, it's perfect. Sport Clips, it's good to be a guy. Let's give it to Trubisky, because as you say, all NFL debuts don't come, the same. Mm-hmm. You get thrown in there in a 2-minute drill and say, here you go, kid, go out there and do this for the very first time at Soldier Field and see what happens, and he handles it the way he does. Again, it doesn't mean he's going to be a superstar. It doesn't mean that in week 2 of the preseason he won't look exactly like the, undeveloped rookie that he is. But for the moment, let's give him MVP Moment of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips.
Yep, completely agree. Again, you watch his throws. They were accurate throws. He didn't most of the time, for the most part, he didn't put his receivers in any kind of bad situations at all. And as I said about Deshaun Watson, I'll say the same thing with Trubisky. Even though all the numbers look good, the best thing about it is there is now tape of him playing his first NFL game. I guarantee you he made mistakes, and that's what you concentrate on. We saw the good things, but it's the little things that the eye of the person who's not a coach doesn't see that they'll go over and that they'll fix. And he already knows them, and the coaches, they'll go over them together, and that's going to be the most important thing out of this.
All right, we're just getting warmed up. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Great guest list today, including Woj, as mentioned, a little over an hour from now, with the latest insight onto the Carmelo trade talks and the Kyrie trade talks and more. Michael Collins live from Quail Hollow. Kenny Chesney in our studio
was
today.
There last night. Me and Chris, my wife, and Jake and his wife Jenny, we all went to the concert last night.
Good fun, so we'll have Kenny in here. Mike Golic Jr. will be in our studio coming up next. Looking forward to that. We go through some more moments from the preseason last night, and at some point this morning it has been promised to me, Junior is going to light up the old man, and I am looking forward to that.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, I don't know. It's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
All right, every morning, for those of you who wake up early, you hear him before we come on ESPN Radio. First and last, Mike Golic Jr. is here with the 2 thumbs up pose, which for those of you who follow Mikey on Instagram, seems to have sort of become your thing here as you traveled all over Europe over the last 2 weeks. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I sort of made it a thing for the trip, and it just stumbled into it. Like the first place I went over there, I stopped in London, Paris, and Amsterdam.
So you saw London.
Yes.
You saw France.
Yes.
You saw
you see anybody
in their underpants?
Right, I'm sorry.
I think a few people probably saw me in my underpants.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
I'll always indulge those kind of pleasures. But, and I went and saw, like, Westminster Abbey was the first thing I saw, and it's massive. And I went up there and I had someone take a picture of me because it's a big building that makes me, a big person, look very little. And fundamentally, I kind of like that idea. Like, I always said that, like, as a big guy, the one thing I love is when people turn it around and I get to be the little spoon sometimes if I'm with a lady friend. It makes me feel safe, warm, much like the Westminster Abbey did. And so it just sort of spawned into something, and so I kind of made it a social play for the rest of the trip. I saw, the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, the Eiffel Tower, the I Am Amsterdam sign over in the museum district there, and just kind of made that my thing through it, and people seem to get a good kick out of it. That and my fanny packs. I got great fanny packs.
You got two fanny packs. One was bedazzled, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, all sequins all over. That was my dress fanny pack. I had a wedding in France that I went to, and I wore the dress fanny for that one. The other one was covered in pineapples.
So you were in London, you were in
Paris,
France, you were in Amsterdam, you were in Iceland.
Yeah, we had a layover in Iceland, went and checked out the Blue Lagoon over there. That's a real treat.
I saw you with the
mud mask.
Mud mask, like it was white. You looked like the White Walker.
So I found out in the airport that Iceland is actually called the Land of Fire and Ice, which, if anyone who follows Game of Thrones, the most recent book is the Song of Fire and Ice. So,
Greeny, I know you know that.
Put that together. I figured that was right on the tip of your tongue, but I'd help get you there just in case.
I'm trying to remember the rock and roll reference. What's Fire and Ice? Fire and Ice is a song also. If I'm not, that's what jumped into my mind, is a song from the 70s.
Okay.
Which should give you some indication of just how far behind in this conversation I am. And one other thing that I noticed before we move on to all the football, we just did, and whoever cuts these does a terrific job, these best of the week.
Yes, they're
that
excellent.
Just aired on TV, and I was watching and enjoying it, a really good job, as they do every week. And one of the things that came up in it is that you have lost, Mike Golic Sr., have lost so much weight that you now wear an XL in shirts.
I do.
Which means that sometimes you and I wear the same size. In some brands, I also wear an XL. Mike Golic Jr., you've lost a bunch of weight. What size do you wear in a shirt? If you said just a basic shirt, what do you wear?
Rocking that XL now, man. That's what it's all about.
XL. So you are looking at three men on this set right now. We all have the same first name, and we all wear the same size shirt.
There is no way, because let's understand, different clothes have different cuts. Any XL you're wearing that fits you well is going to be like
Give me that
Lycra on
T-shirt.
us.
Just give me that T-shirt. I'll put it on right now.
One thing,
that T-shirt will fit me.
Even though I know it'll fit you, but it may not fit you well.
No. It won't look like a night shirt. That shirt will actually fit me.
One thing I've learned, because I did it one time on TV, even though I lost all this weight, I'm not taking my shirt off on TV.
Fair enough.
I will take my shirt. You want to swap right now?
No.
I feel like we can make the exchange right
I'm
here.
not swapping right now. I don't want to like.
I showered before. I showered a couple days ago.
I'm merely saying, whoever would have thought we would see the day, the three of us would all wear the same size shirt.
I mean, all three of it is like all looking in a mirror, isn't it?
Back when you weighed 313 pounds, or when you were playing offensive line.
You were up 310 was the most you were? Yeah.
The most I was. Yeah. And now me and Greeny could swap shirts right here. I'm telling you, we can do this. Let's play a mental trick.
Maybe we'll do it during a break or something like that. Okay, let's get down to business. Here's some of the Twitter reaction early. The 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Where are we here? Steve tweets, "Start the kid, no training wheels needed, I guess." That's from Chicago immediately. How quickly would you be tempted to do that?
Well, again, you'd have to wait and see. I mean, it's way too early. John Fox is right, Mike, in saying the depth chart's not changing, but the wheels may start going a little quicker, but there's no way I can sit here and say, oh, yeah, start him in week one no matter what. There's still more to see, more to do, and you have to see how some things play out.
Yeah, ideally you wouldn't want to. In this situation, in some ways kind of mimics what we're seeing in Cleveland right now with Deshaun Kaiser coming off of last night.
He had a slow start, a couple of boy, he can throw the long ball. Well, he throws a long ball really, really well.
So scores on like a 45-yard touchdown to win them the game in the fourth quarter, eerily similar to his first start at Notre Dame when he had to, well, not his first start, had to come in in the stead of Malik Zaire there, tossed a game-winning touchdown to the Texans' now Will Fuller to win that game, the deep ball on that one. So it's kind of how he burst onto the scene for a lot of people, but you see him, the way he moves around in the pocket, how great his base is there, all of those things that are really difficult to see out of young quarterbacks. Now, he's probably got a lot of stuff to learn, but he's got a great guy to learn it from. And at a place where they've invested in the interior offensive line, that they might actually be able to keep him upright, that to me is always the biggest trepidation about putting a rookie out there in live bullets.
So here's the interesting difference is there was talk a week ago that Kaiser was winning the job, right? And would there be some sort of, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening if Kaiser started? Probably not, right? But there would be that in Chicago. Why?
Because they just spent a bunch of money on Mike Glennon.
Exactly right. There's the expectations there of the money spent, and you have a guy in Osweiler who the Texans couldn't get rid of that contract fast enough, and like, oh my God, we found somebody to take it. Cody Kessler, who got some playing time but hasn't done anything that says, oh yeah, he should be the guy. So they were looking for somebody to grab hold of that job, where in Chicago, you had a guy in Mike Glennon. This is your job. We paid you some pretty good money. We want you to have this job to bridge this guy over, but that guy may be in your rearview mirror a little quicker.
But it really is a 1 year. I mean, the Glennon thing we all know is a 1 year commitment, which in the National Football League is the equivalent of no commitment. So if Trubisky sets the world on fire, I don't think there's anywhere in the world he starts week one. But I do think that it's possible that we see him at some point around the middle of the season.
Well, I don't think it's any stretch at all. And when you look at these guys, I mean, what is Brock Osweiler supposed to make this year? Like, are those numbers that far apart between him and Glennon? The difference is that Osweiler was brought in as a cast-off, so he's not thought of very highly.
Exactly.
They brought Mike Glennon in there with intent. Well, intent changes. Mike Glennon will be the first one to tell you that. He saw that happen firsthand in Tampa Bay when they drafted Jameis Winston number 1 overall. Like, unfortunately, this guy is kind of used to the way this scenario plays out. And when you've got a number 2 overall pick in the draft sitting on your team, guys are smart on these rosters. They see draft picks in a lot lower places at other positions that signal the writing on the wall that I'm not long for this world. And when you go out there and you're Mike Glennon, you want to show them, you want to ease their doubt and say, no, I've got this. I'm going to be a bridge for longer than you want to give me credit for. Going 2 for 8 and tossing a pick 6, I understand it's not emblematic of everything, but it's not that reassurance that I'm sure Mike Glennon was looking for.
Yeah, Mike Golic Jr. here. It's a very good point. Another good example is Matt Flynn in Seattle. Right. The Seahawks gave him what at that time was a lot of money, and a third-round pick named Russell Wilson wound up taking his job week 1 of his rookie year, and the rest was history. Okay, whole preseason action last night. Mike Golic Jr., what else jumped out at you?
Dalvin Cook. I was doing a lot of calls talking about fantasy football yesterday. We got the fantasy marathon coming up next week here on ESPN. And I was asked about running backs kind of outside of the realm of, we hear Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette a lot. Leonard Fournette got in the end zone last night. We know McCaffrey's going to be a big part of that offense. But Dalvin Cook, and again, they've retooled that offensive line in Minnesota. They drafted Pat Elflein. Who knows if he'll be the day one starter yet or not, but brought in Riley Reif and Mike Remmers to it, those tackle positions. It was turnstiles yesterday. Kean Fahey, who does work for Pre-Snap Breeds, said yesterday the Falcons had all 5 of their linemen play 1,000-plus snaps last year. The Minnesota Vikings had no linemen on their offensive line play over 1,000 snaps last year, so that continuity wasn't there, and it affected Sam Bradford. And we know Adrian Peterson's kind of a different running back.
Yes.
He's
a running back.
He's the relic of the bygone era. Dalvin Cook, we saw a lot from him. We saw him catching screens, catching passes out of the backfield, traditional running. They've gone to more of a zone scheme. I think he's a guy on a team that's going to be pretty good this year that has a chance to put up some big numbers.
We know they have a pretty good defense at times, a little inconsistent at times, but I do like their defense, and I know you loved him, and we've talked about Dalvin Cook in the type of running back you need in the NFL, a guy who can run and a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. I know there were a couple of character issues. The shoulder was an issue as well, but I know Greeny and I, we both
Rookie of the year.
Yeah,
he's going to be the Rookie of the year. I mean, running back is the easiest position to be Rookie of the year. I mean, quarterback is the hardest, and last year it was Dak Prescott, and he pulled off, something that was almost unprecedented. Give him all the credit in the world, but I think Cook will be. Can I give you one thing that jumped out at me last night? And I know this is it's a touch on the self-serving side, but I've been telling you about this guy forever. Did you see the catch in the end zone Austin Carr made last night? This is just one little moment. Austin Carr, wide receiver out of Northwestern, undrafted. I couldn't believe no one took him. If you watch that guy play in college, he was the Big Ten receiver of the year last year, but because of his size, he doesn't wind up getting drafted at all. Garoppolo, this is late in the game last night, Garoppolo is rolling left and throws a ball up in the end zone, and Austin Carr, who never dropped a ball his entire life in college, went up and made an unbelievable catch in traffic, which I've been telling you for a while. I don't root for the Patriots, but I will root for that kid for the rest of my life. He made a great catch. He's going to make that team, and he's going to contribute.
You always look for guys in that position. You were in that position undrafted. As I said, I was a 10th rounder. You look at a guy like Tommy Lee Lewis from New Orleans, who was undrafted last year out of Northern Illinois, had 7 catches during the year. Last night he has 10 catches in a game, gets an opportunity to make the most of it. That's a young guy there. As far as older guys, Tom Brady doesn't play. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo steps in and goes, 22 of 28, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. So,
let the quarterback controversy talk begin.
I don't mean that one bit. Not one bit. I just
Start,
mean
Jimmy.
If this
the new
guy
era's here.
is, and no way, I think Brady's got 3 more years. My thought is, what happens with Jimmy after this year when he becomes a free agent?
Quarterback of the Jets next year.
You know who likes to cut bait early from players, even their most high-profile players? The New England Patriots. The coup is on.
That line's
and Jimmy Garoppolo is firing at there. But speaking of Austin Carr,
maybe Brady will be the quarterback of the Jets next year.
Maybe. God, listen, from your lips to God's ears, right? But no, looking at Austin Carr, is it really that surprising, though? Undersized wide receiver who runs great routes, gets undrafted by the Patriots and succeeds? I mean, that's almost become the narrative in New England.
Exactly, especially one with an extraordinarily good mind. The kid is incredibly smart. He was a walk-on who he wasn't even like a preferred walk-on. He actually knocked on the coach's door and said, I'd like to try out for the football team, please, and wound up becoming the Big Ten's receiver of the year.
Back to school time already? It sure is. Sport Clips Haircuts wants you to leap to the head of the class with our giveaway of back-to-school gear plus a year of free haircuts. Visit Sport Clips for the right cut and ask for the MVP experience. Then we'll take care of the rest. After all, winning hair isn't everything. It's the only thing. Review the rules and enter to win at sportclips.com/back-to-school. Sport Clips. It's good to be a guy. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
You're getting destroyed by Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I have an apology to make. The entire series is called The Song of Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
I recognize I made that mistake. You can't make mistakes in the realm of fantasy.
This was the song I was talking about.
Yeah, and this now you've lost Mike, my son. That's Pat Benatar.
That's Pat Benatar, Fire and Ice, but I'm sorry. So you had said that the most recent book in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, what's called The Song of Fire and Ice. It's not. The entire series is called The Song of Fire and Ice for reasons that everyone is finding out this season.
Yeah, you can't get something wrong publicly about Game of Thrones and not get destroyed for it.
Can't do it. Shouldn't have done it. Won't do it again. My apologies to my fellow Game of Thrones fans. I didn't mean to shame you guys because I haven't read the books.
You guys switched shirts here.
We're just three guys named Mike sitting around wearing our XLs. It's that simple. Mike Golic Jr. and I switched shirts during the break. We both look fabulous in them. Straight Talk Wireless nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Let's keep this now out of the realm of joking around and keep it in the realm of serious. Because Mike Golic Jr. and I think, are on the same page on something that Golic Sr., you have been disagreeing with me for a while. And that is this. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback that ever lived, but he is not from the Marvel series. He is not a superhero. He is not going to be playing at a high level in 3 years. That's not on the list of realistic options. You've got Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think a lot of people, including Bill Belichick, believe is the future of quarterback for that franchise. So you've got some tough decisions to make, and they have to be made relatively soon. The fact that he didn't trade him during this offseason is very telling.
Sure is.
So how well he played last night, notwithstanding, but it does go into this. What happens here? What is
Tom Brady's quarterback of the New England Patriots? For you to say,
and what happens with Garoppolo?
And when you're saying in 3 years he can't do that, why?
Then
just because it hasn't been done,
right?
So that doesn't mean anything. As I said, everything grows, from workouts to supplements to eating. Guys are in better shape, barring a major injury. I give him 3 more years. So what? Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent at the end of this year,
right?
So if Tom Brady is again one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, you telling me that Belichick's going to cut bait? I'm telling you, you're nuts.
Well, what do you do then?
You got me.
You got
me. You're going to pay your backup quarterback the franchise fee to keep him around? I have no idea.
Well, the fact that we've heard that idea floated, though, is pretty telling, right? Like, you can say Tom Brady is going to play another 3 years. It's possible, certainly, but possible and likely are two very different things. And to be able to sit here and predict that, because the Patriots have never struck me as an organization that sits around and is willing to see things out to their ultimate end. No, they're trying to stay ahead of the curve on everything. That's why they're out here buying their own planes and doing things that set the standard for the rest of the league. They're out here doing things their way, getting ahead of the curve, because that's the way they know, that's the way they stay on track. They don't seem like the kind that's going to ride Brady out until the wheels fall off and then ultimately say, all right, we'll rebuild from here now, when they've got a guy that clearly there's enough interest in within that organization to keep around and not sell at the high price, again, the Patriot way that they always have. That, to me, is telling.
Listen, I understand the Patriot way, but the Patriot way, in my mind, doesn't work for everybody. And Tom Brady's a guy. If Tom Brady, for the next 2 or 3 years, is a top 5 quarterback, they're not cutting bait. And now what they do with Garoppolo, maybe they give Garoppolo a deal. Maybe Garoppolo sits around and waits. I have no idea.
What does it define a deal?
They give him a free agent deal, but it won't be a better deal than he'll get somewhere else.
Well, then why would he stay there for that?
I have no idea. I'm just telling you. But there is no way, if it comes to that. Now, you can tag him and have a whole nother year on this, but if it were a deal that he could get somewhere else, but if they franchise tag him, then they have to, you live with that. But if not, if you're telling me that the thought of if Brady is another excellent year and Garoppolo, they fear losing him, somebody's going to offer him a big deal if they don't tag him, that they're going to dump Brady just so they can know that's
I'm not
not
saying they're
going to
dump
happen.
Brady, but I'm saying they're not going to let Garoppolo go.
That's fine. Keep Garoppolo. The whole point that I'm saying is Brady, to me, can have 3 more years. What you do with Garoppolo is what you do with Garoppolo. You want to keep him, that's great. But I'm saying if Tom Brady is playing well, he is not going to fit the mold that you're talking about, Mike, and everybody knows, where they're going to dump a guy a year or 2 early before the end of it. That's not going to happen with the greatest quarterback of all time if he's still playing at a top level. I guess that's my point. It's the most important position on the field, and if your guy is still one of the top players at that position, why the hell would you dump him early?
I'm just saying that part is a big if.
Right.
Like, that part we're assuming is a huge if in all of this. And if you've got Tom Brady, who, like you're saying, could be great for you for the next 2 or 3 years, or Jimmy Garoppolo, who you believe could be your guy for the next 10 plus, that's hard math to overcome at some point. At some point, there's got to be a breaking point, and I think they've got time to stave that decision off, to really get a look at what they think is going to happen. But I've said I think you combine the competitor that Tom Brady is with the prudent business people that the New England Patriots are, and it ends up with Tom Brady wearing a different color jersey before it's all said and done with his career.
It's not inconceivable. It may sound, it's unimaginable, but I actually think it's not inconceivable. If you franchise tag Garoppolo next year, he's making more money than Brady is going into the following season, which, if it doesn't matter to Brady, maybe it doesn't matter, but it's certainly an unusual circumstance.
Brady's also, understands the business side of this too.
Yeah, I don't know where you factor in also the fact that Brady is like a son to the owner, which is incredibly close to the family that owns the franchise, which maybe shouldn't factor into football decisions, but we all understand sometimes does. I mean, look, in a totally different way, look at Colin Kaepernick not being on a team. If you don't think owners have a say in football decisions, then you're not paying close enough attention. All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're just getting rolling here. All our guests appear, as always, on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Today, they'll include Woj with a lot of basketball news coming up in our next hour. We got Michael Collins from Quail Hollow in the PGA. We got Kenny Chesney in studio for an hour. We're going to get to the Josh Rosen comments coming up here. We're just three guys named Mike sitting around wearing our XL shirts, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Just three guys named Mike sitting around wearing XL shirts. Again, if you're just joining us, Junior and I switched shirts after we made the observation, actually Senior and I earlier this week, made the observation with all the weight you've lost. And that's the first thing people say to me now. It used to always be, you're bigger than I thought you'd be. Because
how good looking I am?
To you. I mean, over the years, people will say, will always make some remark about you to me, and I'm sure vice versa.
You have a nice lower chin.
That's not nice.
Do you mean the second one or the third one?
Okay.
Which one of those do you
Seriously.
like?
The gizzard. He's developed my grandpa's gizzard now. You lost weight. It's like you deflated the sack below there, like the frog. Now it's like a flappy gizzard.
Why are you still here?
Hi.
I've lost track of what I was saying. Oh, the thing that everyone comments to me on now is how much weight you've lost.
Right.
That's all I ever hear is, oh, my God, I can't believe how much weight Golic has lost. And we made the observation earlier this week, you've gotten down to an XL, which is my size. We wear the same size shirt. Junior, who is anything but junior when it comes to size, and I wear the same size shirt. So we switched shirts during a break, and I think we both look fabulous.
It's unreal. We're wearing it well right now.
You're wearing it well. Greeny, that's a little baggy on you.
It's a touch baggy, but I mean, it's not like I'm wearing like a nightshirt.
It's close.
It's a reasonable looking size.
It really shows off your pipe cleaners.
I get the sun's out, guns out, my friend.
No.
Don't knock it.
Okay.
In his defense, I think if he had put that shirt on when I got it brand new, it would be all right.
Before you stretched it out,
blown it out a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm like a XL plus. I'm the Sexl. It's a little bit extra to it.
All right, Let's get to some football here because I really want to make sure we get to the Josh Rosen stuff because that's what I've been looking forward to all week is this this discussion about that. But quickly, obviously, top headline today, Mitchell Trubisky. Controversially, the Bears trade up a spot in the draft to take him number 2. And does one night mean it was the right move? Obviously not, but you could not get off to a better start than Trubisky.
No, you couldn't. He did everything you asked. And as many will say, I was against third stringers or whatever. But as we talked about earlier, if he threw the ball poorly, we would have ripped him this morning and say, oh, see, he's not ready. Put him on the bench. He threw well. And forgetting the throwing well, he looked good, rolling right, rolling left. He put the ball on the money. That, Mike, was one of the most impressive things to me is his poise and just being able to hang in the pocket and have command to come in at the end of the half, minute 55 to go, lead to a touchdown with 13 seconds to go. Put together the string of completions that he did. He showed a lot of poise and a lot of command to the offense, but I was really impressed with his accuracy. He never really hung his receivers out to dry at all.
And you know what? The counter, and someone brought this up on Twitter this morning when I was doing first and last, was, you can say he's out there playing against third stringers. He's playing with them, too. The guys that are blocking for him and the guys that are catching for him are not guys that are at his level either or at that starting level. So it's not like he's getting a ton of help from those spots either. But for me, you mentioned situations. That's a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of preseason is trying to see guys in situations against different teams. You can replicate those in practice. They do 2-minute drills and all variations of time left, of timeouts left, of place on the field, and you can replicate that in practice, but there's still something to doing it in a place that's not scripted, doing it in a place where you're not controlling all the variables, and to see him be able to operate like that in one of the most important scenarios in those 2-minute end of half, end of game scenarios is a huge feather in his cap.
You know, we always look at quarterbacks. Another quarterback, DeShone Kizer for the Cleveland Browns. He's a guy that looked like he was rising up and then looked like a rookie in a scrimmage, and he played well last night, throws the deep ball incredibly well, but what goes along with it is the guys he's trying to beat out didn't do a whole lot. Now, again, Brock Osweiler is playing against the starters, and then it was Cody Kessler went in, and then Kaiser. But he looked good. I mean, when they get their chance to show, they're showing. So these rookies, Deshaun Watson, will he have a chance to displace Tom Savage at some point? Now, Trubisky threw himself into that conversation. I know it's only one game. Kaiser had already kind of been in that discussion. Where it won't happen is in Kansas City with Mahomes. Alex Smith is going to be the starter there. So that's not going to change no matter how well Mahomes plays. But these other three situations took some interesting turns.
Well, if you look at the four, there weren't four quarterbacks in the first round, but Kaiser went so early in the second. Let's use the four of them. They're in vastly different situations, right? Mahomes goes to a Kansas City team that is a Super Bowl contender and has an established quarterback. In Houston, Watson goes to a team that is a Super Bowl contender without an established quarterback. But the fact that everyone's estimation of him was he was the most ready to go in and play, I think he has a chance to go in and play. I don't think it's inconceivable he wins that job week one, that he is the starting quarterback when the season begins in Houston.
I don't think that's inconceivable either. Would the Texans love Tom Savage to play extremely well, being that he has more years in the league than Watson and help lead this team? Absolutely, that's what they would want. But I agree with you. It would not stun me if Deshaun Watson won that job.
I know he doesn't make the decisions, but didn't DeAndre Hopkins come out the other day and essentially throw his hat behind Tom Savage?
Yes, he did.
And for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's been one of the better receivers in the league, but has suffered through quarterback hell there in Houston, that to me is kind of telling of what Tom Savage has put together behind closed doors so far. I went into this thinking that Deshaun Watson probably had the best chance to be on the field week one. Now that to me looks like a scenario where it could be the opposite. With all these other situations where it's a lot, you're not getting those veteran returns out of the quote-unquote veterans that are on your team trying to stave off these rookies, whereas Tom Savage seems to have secured some of that. Because all these performances do, and you know this, Dad, they go and secure you more reps in the following weeks. Maybe Kaiser and Mitch Trubisky get more one-looks in Game 2 of preseason so they can see them out there on tape against those defenses. Maybe it's just in practice the way those reps get divvied up, but they've earned that much out of this game.
Yeah, the situation in Chicago with Trubisky is they brought in a guy to be the quarterback this year. They're paying him starting quarterback money for this 1 year only, and you've made a huge investment in Trubisky, so you're going to do whatever you think best develops him. If you think it's put him in soon, you'll put him in soon. If you think it's wait till the end of the year or not at all this year, I think the smart thing to do is whatever you think is in the best interest of his development, that's job one this season over anything else.
The first thing you're going to see there of the next step, and Mike, you know this, is it'll be in practice where we don't see it. He'll take reps from Sanchez.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That's what's going to happen is if they feel more comfortable with what they saw, he'll start to get more of those reps, and it'll be at Mark Sanchez's expense as he tries to go to move up the ladder.
That picture starts to get super clear as the weeks press on here, where you see those reps dwindle and you start to understand who's going to be on the team and who's not, and that's going to become very, very apparent there. But you talked about it with the quarterbacks. How much does, I heard you guys bring it up before, Ryan Pace and John Fox, they put out our list on .com last night of quarterbacks on the hot seat. John Fox's name is on there.
Coaches on the hot seat.
Coaches on the hot seat, yeah. So John Fox's name is on there. Hugh Jackson is not. So Hugh Jackson gets to operate from a place where I understand I've got time. What if all of a sudden things are going south? John Fox has to make decisions in a hurry that aren't necessarily in the best interest of long-term for Mitch Trubisky, but are going to save him his job in the here and now by saying, all right, we got this kid out here, now I need time.
Those are things that have to be taken into consideration. Again, Fox is not a 39-year-old coach. He's a guy who's been around the block, but he's also on his fourth coaching job and isn't going to get a fifth. So, or his third coaching job isn't going to get a fourth, I think it is. Right? He was in Carolina and then he was in Denver.
Right.
So, I mean, do coaches sometimes do things in the best interest of keeping their own jobs? Of course they do. And you can criticize that, but then you would be being unrealistic. Everyone does that.
And it's not a criticism, but it's just acknowledging that while those quarterback situations are similar, they're driven by guys with agendas and places in their coaching career that are in a much different place. So you can expect the decision-making to probably reflect that.
All right, let's roll on. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance, creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options and pick the price that works for you. So Mike Golic, Sr. and Jr. here. One of the big stories of this week certainly were the comments of Josh Rosen, which it turns out were from an interview that he did several months ago, but just was posted by Bleacher Report this week. And he is the opinionated, I'm not sure what the right word is, young quarterback from UCLA with all the potential in the world. He's a guy who trouble is the wrong word, but certainly got a lot of attention. He's got a hot tub at his room and all kinds of things that have gone on with him. He also might be the first pick in the draft next year, depending on how the season plays out. And he had some comments this past that were posted this past week, in which most notably he said, football and college don't really go together. And Mike Golic Sr. was put off, I think, to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would that be a good description of your reaction to it?
A bit off that line of football and academics in college don't mean you can't do both. When there is a long litany of thousands of people, including an academic All-American sitting to my left, who did do both.
Including Josh Rosen, who never said you can't do both.
Right.
Said they don't go together.
Said they don't,
Which the comparison that we got brought up a lot was people work full-time jobs and go to college. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure if you ask those people, do these things go together? They'd probably say no. They'd probably say they would rather do it. They can, but my point is he never said you can't do this. He said they don't go together well. But he never said you can't do it, and that's what everyone seemed to want to make it about, which I had a problem with.
Tell me why. What was your problem with it?
Because that's disingenuous, and it knocks off a good point he was going. Look at the body of that interview and tell me he wasn't knocked off a place that he was going. He was asked about and talking about the fact that some guys just really aren't cut out for college and are brought there because of their ability in athletics. And then he asked, wait, you mean some people aren't supposed to go in college? That was the sentiment of the next question. And what is a kid with the background of Josh Rosen, who comes from, not too dissimilar from mine, who comes from a background where you come from a bit of money and you're in a position where I've got a background and an understanding and the ability and the tools to use my academic career to the utmost potential of it. What does a guy who's in that position, who's already kind of seen as maybe a little bit elitist because of that background, say when he's asked that question, wait, some guys don't belong in college? How does he sound if he says yes to that question? Probably not very good, and especially doesn't reflect very good to his peers, who he clearly cares about based on the rest of these statements, who he's out here advocating for in all the rest of these statements. So he gets knocked off, and he says the answer that's going to get him the least blowback here, and we all attach to that one idea that these two things don't go together, and we make can't, and go down a whole bag of worms that is not the point of the sentiment of what he was talking about.
Well, we had agreed on in talking some of the things he said. Do some guys, maybe don't want to go to college? Well, absolutely. Do some guys get pushed through to easier classes? Absolutely. I mean, we completely admit that. But I still, even the premise of don't go together, not can't go together, they have been. I mean, they have been for years. I mean, people have been able to do it and do it well. Last I checked, a guy like Andrew Luck was an engineer major. We've seen the Myron Rolls of the world go on for
Rhodes Scholarship.
Rhodes Scholars. We've seen, and I'm picking just a couple, but it's happened over and over and over again. So it can be done and can be done well.
I understand that, but just because things have been done over the course of a long period of time doesn't always mean they're the right way to do things. And his point off of that, listen, I openly said he misspoke, and I heard Damian say the same thing with you guys. Probably could have chosen his words better, and as a 20-year-old kid, this is a good, easy way to learn. Kind of like Jamal Adams. You learn very early on in a low-stakes environment that choosing your words right is okay. But with Jamal Adams, we were all cool and comfortable saying, well, you know what he was trying to get at. Here, we don't seem to be willing to give Josh that benefit of the doubt, and I'm very curious as to why. And I think it's because it's something that kind of upsets the establishment a little bit.
No, I understand what you're saying, but even I'm not saying he said they can't do it. He said you can't do it or you can't be done. Even how he meant it, I disagree with. I guess that's my point. So I'm not taking it further than saying it can't be done. I'm saying the way he said it, the intent he meant, I don't agree with. I mean, what's the better way? Well,
no, the intent he meant, and this is the way I took it, and taking it in context with the other answers, which is you look at the intent behind that. These things don't marry up very well together already. He used himself as an example. He's a kid that could graduate in 3.5 years and pursue an MBA, but because of football and academics, and there are classes you can't always take, and you've got to move things around.
Choices you have to make.
Yeah, choices you have to make, which is fine. That's an example he used. He's saying, it's difficult for me, and I'm a guy who has these plans for after football. Right. Look at some of my teammates who are less equipped to handle this load academically. Look at what some of them are pushed into and asked to do. They work on the same schedule as me, but they're not operating with the same tool bag. And all he asked is, why can't schools do more to help some of those guys out? Why can't they take a more active interest? Now, he doesn't have the answer, and he doesn't need to because none of us do.
I'm curious as to, because, listen, we all went to Notre Dame, and we see the help they offer you there.
I'm saying that's not everywhere.
Okay,
though.
but
that's not the meat of the bell curve.
It's not everywhere, but I mean, what is universal everywhere? I mean, that the intent is to help, and it can, as Nick Saban said, we take guys, who maybe would struggle, and we put them in a position to, if they're not making the NFL, they have a degree. We'll help them along the way. Now, some of that certainly can be disingenuous. I get it because they're helping them on the football field. But if they didn't have football, where would they be? So at least it's giving them a chance. I'm not sure of everybody who is agreeing with Josh Rosen. What's your answer? Everybody universally, 100% of all colleges do it the right way? Give me a break. Nothing happens, in a vacuum that way.
I understand nothing happens in a vacuum that way, but to ignore the meat of the bell curve in this, because we can bring up Myron Rolle and Andrew Luck and me and all these guys, but at the end of the day, those are outliers on this, right? The meat of the bell curve is a bunch of guys who probably aren't qualified to be where they are, who don't want to be and aren't equipped with what they are. Like, think about that, too. Like, I came from a background because of you guys where I understood and valued education.
Right.
There's guys that are coming up just trying to make sure that they can take care of their family however it's possible.
So let me ask you quickly, what's the answer to that?
I'm not saying you have to have an answer. Josh Rosen's a 20-year-old kid. Of course he doesn't have the answer, but pointing out a problem and saying something is wrong doesn't make him the bad guy.
But I guess I would ask, I mean, what's the problem? You get guys, okay, maybe aren't as equipped, but they're getting scholarships, they're being put in a position, they're getting, and a lot of times, sometimes we use this against them, they're skated through and put in easier classes.
And how does that help them on the back end then? If you go in there, because the idea of a degree is great, but we're even seeing that that's not giving regular kids the returns on normal things.
Without a doubt. There are so many guys that get a degree and do something completely else, or whatever they learn, they have to learn something completely new. I agree with that.
Something else, or don't learn through the process. If you're putting kids in easy classes and passing them through just so they can stay on the field, which I can't knock coaches for and administration fundamentally either, because they've got jobs and families to feed. But you've created an industry in college athletics that's a multi-billion-dollar industry where all of these other people are making money and have that real-life stakes on the line. And just because you've paid these student-athletes in IOUs and asked them to accept it on the back end doesn't mean you can screw up the process in the middle and just say, well, we're giving you this thing. It's sort of a promise that something might happen, but then we're not going to put the value in the meat of that process where it belongs.
But isn't there a responsibility of a student at some point as well?
There absolutely is, but when that responsibility also, you're brought there because of your skill set in football. You, in theory, want to play football.
Right.
And so when all of your coaches and those people on down the line are saying, listen, not so many words, and you dealt with this in Philadelphia, and I dealt with this to a certain extent. When you appear to have outside interests and want to put your time and effort in other places, not always received very well.
You're right.
And so when you get those messages from a coaching staff that the thing I came here to do, the thing I love, and the thing my best skill set is in might be infringed upon because I want to also explore this second half of things, how is that supposed to incentivize a kid to want to go out there and do those things?
Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, a really good discussion. What I would just add to it is, Mike Sr., in response to what you're saying, what is the answer? What Mikey is pointing out here is, if you listen to everything that you just described, and I think you described the situation accurately, what do we actually have here? We are making a business transaction. This is a business agreement that is being made between a 17-year-old kid and a university. But the actual benefit that is being received by the kid, with apologies to all of the people who graduate with all of this debt, I understand that you don't want to hear this. But the reality is, the agreement that you are making, it is by no means equitable to the kids. They have no option. You have no choice. If you want to have any chance to play professional football in this country, you have no choice but to sign that scholarship.
But that's what it is, man. That's life. What's the lesser of two evils here? Not let them go to school because of their skill set and have them go in easier classes, and say, you know what, you can't go to school, you're not good enough. You're on your own. Go do whatever you want to do.
But those aren't the only two options.
What's the other option?
The other option is for the universities to hold up their end of the bargain more. They don't give out 85 full-ride scholarships to kids on football teams out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
The university's getting something out of
this. They want
a
return.
And so
I get it.
But I guess that's my point, is when we talk about other people who say, well, normal students aren't getting this, that, and the other, the university doesn't have an investment in you. You're not making that university money. You hear the statement all the time, no one's lining up in stadiums to go watch a Chem Lab. And that's not a knock on them, but the school's not getting things out of you. So the least they can do is make sure, all right, we've got this agreement. We're going to live up fully to it for you, because if you don't live up to it fully on your end as a student athlete, what do? More often than not,
listen,
they find a way to get you out of it.
And the kids in the Ken Lab also, by the way, don't live with all of the restrictions that are placed on all of these varsity athletes, which are numerous and in many cases ridiculous.
Well, listen, that's true and something that needs to be dealt with. I get it. But I guess the whole process to me is what's better.
I understand that there's not better available right now, but
there could be better available right now.
I mean, I'm saying it's not
some of the
available
rules
right now.
I'm talking about the general of a student, an athlete coming to college, maybe not as well equipped as others, as well equipped as you or a Josh Rosen or an Andrew Luck, someone not as equipped as well, a Myron Rolle, but still the option to them is better than the alternative. I guess that's the point. It doesn't mean we can't try and fix some things and make them better, but still right now, all we can do, it's like the marijuana thing. We all think marijuana should be legalized everywhere. But the bottom line is it's still illegal and you can't get test positive for it.
So that doesn't mean we shouldn't be sitting here saying legalize it.
No, but that's fine. So
that's what Josh Rosen is doing.
I said that's all Josh Rosen did is point out and say, you know what? And the thing about it and why it resonated so well for me is because he wasn't talking about him. He was saying this is a problem that some of my teammates deal with, guys that I'm sure he knows at other places that aren't taking as good a care of you academically as UCLA is, that aren't giving you the help that Notre Dame is, that they do a really good job with.
Right.
That he knows guys that aren't doing that. So I don't know why he's the bad guy for pointing out what a lot of us, the rest of us have, just because he's inside the system now, and we generally don't tend to respond favorably to college athletes voicing strong opinions. That's just not a thing that happens. Sam Darnold, and this is not a knock on him, probably going to be the number one quarterback, came out and said, you know what? That's Josh. That's what he does. That's not what I'm about. I'm just here to play football. And people love that.
Right.
The people love the kid that's just going to line up. He's going to be appreciative of what he's got. And that's good enough for most people. And Josh says, you know what? This could be a little bit better. I'm not saying it's terrible now. I don't think he came out and said he was living in squalor necessarily.
No, he did not, and some of the points he said were true. I guess just his overview I had an issue with.
All right, let's pause on that thought, and I'd love to get back to it as we continue. Mike and Mike, again, presented by Progressive Insurance, our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll go to a different topic coming up next, because Woj will join us, Adrian Wojnarowski. I still can't do it, but he's the best in the business, and he's got enormous insight into Melo and Kyrie and more, and he's live right after this word.
And by the way, very quickly, your shirt that's on my son right now is completely pitted out.
I know.
You want it back?
It's a little musty.
You want it back?
Yeah, well, I mean, I need it back. I've got plans for the day, and I can't wear this shirt for them.
Your plans just got a little soggier.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com.
Back to school time already? It sure is. Sport Clips Haircuts wants you to leap to the head of the class with our giveaway of back-to-school gear plus a year of free haircuts. Visit Sport Clips for the right cut and ask for the MVP experience. Then we'll take care of the rest. After all, winning hair isn't everything. It's the only thing. Review the rules and enter to win at sportclips.com/back-to-school. Sport Clips, it's good to be a guy. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
All right, we are Mike and Mike. We expect to have Woj for you here in just a second. We've had a couple of different basketball pieces of information, one of them involving Carmelo, and this one came directly from Woj, which is that the Knicks and Rockets have resumed their conversations about a trade possibility, and that of course, is one of the big pending storylines of the summer. The other is Kyrie Irving, and Woj was on last night talking about how don't be surprised if this thing stretches well into the season. There is a date, and that date is December 15th, after which teams can make moves involving players who were signed as free agents. So there will be a lot more players available in trade if the Cavaliers want to trade Kyrie after December 15th than there will be before.
And also about Kyrie, the Dave McMenamin story about Kyrie not for a 3-day stretch in the playoffs, not talking to any of his teammates at all. I mean,
that was a strange one to me.
Yeah, that was. That really was. That's got to be interesting to do, to not have any association with teammates during the playoffs.
Yeah, this again is apparently James Jones, who was a former Cavalier, who's now working in the Suns front office, and would talk about the possible trade to Phoenix. He told Dave McMenamin, quote, he saw Kyrie Irving in the playoffs this year, in between the first round when they beat Indiana and the second when they played Toronto, go consecutive days without speaking to a teammate at practice. It's one thing for people to go through your ups and downs during the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, the main thing is the main thing, and we're brothers and we're pulling together to get this thing done. Maybe that's the sort of thing that happens from time to time, and we just don't know
Sure.
about it.
Well, there's so much that happens behind the scenes that we are not going to know about, where you think everything is good, and it really may not be.
But for it to have been that bad
Yeah.
is really something else. So anyway, we're having a little trouble getting a hold of Woj. Hopefully we'll get him for you shortly. In the meantime, I think the guys are calling Schefter, who may have some news for us as well. So we'll work on that. And, of course, a lot of reaction is coming in to our conversation with Mike Golic Jr., which, as he frequently does, he takes the reasonable position. And one of the many things I like about your son is that he's not yelling and screaming, Josh Rosen is right, and why aren't you listening to him? He's saying people aren't paying attention to what he's actually saying, and it makes more sense than it would appear. And the only thing I'll say about the whole amateurism system, the whole way the whole system is set up, I understand that we look at it where it is today, and we look at what we consider to be reasonable alternatives, and we say, well, it's better than those. It probably is. But the way I like to look at things is, if we were just to start the system now, if there was no system, look, we want to have a system. We've decided football has become a really big deal in college. Let's start the system from scratch. Let's sit down, get a bunch of really smart people, and start it from scratch. I don't think there's any way in the world we'd wind up exactly where we are now.
Well, in some of the rules, yes, but the overall of a student athlete who maybe isn't as well academically inclined going to a college, I don't think that's changing. I don't think the basic premise, the foundation of what we see is changing. Maybe some of the ridiculous rules that they have, but the actual, hey, you weren't the greatest high school athlete in the world or academic person in the world, but you're going to go to college on a full scholarship to play football. There's expectations there. I don't think that changes. I don't think that changes at all.
We will get back to that because I'm told Schefter is ready to go, and I'm going to give him the floor. Here's our NFL insider, Adam Schefter, with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line with a little insight into something we should expect to hear today. Schefter, what do you have?
Well, good morning, Mike and Mike. And essentially, we've got the day that I think a lot of people have expected all summer long and waited for all summer long, and that's the day that the NFL is likely to rule on the Ezekiel Elliott investigation that it has been conducting for over a year. Now, this has gone back and forth so many different times, so I want to preface this by saying there's informed and educated speculation, but it is just that. It is not actual reporting of facts. I'm just giving you the stuff that I've been able to pick up this week, over the last month, over the course of the last year. Again, we think the NFL is going to rule today. We think he's going to be suspended. We think it's going to be, I think, more severe than people think. And the reason I say that is because here is the whole issue. The question becomes, how is the league going to frame the violation here? Is it looking at Ezekiel Elliott as a domestic violence offender? If it is, and if it has evidence to that effect, you are looking at a 6-game suspension. That's what the domestic violence policy carries. And by all accounts, that is what they've been doing all along. Now, you'll remember Jerry Jones saying there's no evidence of any domestic violence in this investigation and in this report. And that's where it gets interesting and gets back to the question of how is the league going to frame the results of its investigation. Has it found enough to think that there's a domestic violence issue here? And if it is, then you are looking at 6 games. Now, if they decide to go a different route and they decide to say Ezekiel Elliott has violated the personal conduct policy for a accumulation of behavior, and let's be very clear, the league has in fact considered all the events that have taken place over the last year. Don't be confused by anything else. So when I say that, I mean any bar incident that he's had, and by the way, I think there have been more than have been reported. We're talking about the woman on St. Patrick's Day where he pulled down her shirt. We're talking about being charged with a misdemeanor for speeding. We're talking about whatever else the league has found. The league could decide to say, okay, you know what? I don't know what they're going to do. We don't have enough evidence for domestic violence, but there's enough here for personal conduct to say we're going to get you for 2 games or 4 games or whatever the league determines. If the league decides to go down the domestic violence path, nobody, well, the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Zeke Elliott, is going to fault them for being too punitive, right? Because here's the problem. The league had a chance on domestic violence with Ray Rice and didn't get it right. The league had a chance on Josh Brown on domestic violence and didn't get it right. It suspended him 1 game. And then a couple months later, his journals surface where there's actual documentation about an abusive relationship. So if the league is wrong, and the league doesn't even have enough evidence, and I don't know what they do and don't have. I know that they've met with the accuser on multiple occasions. Okay? So again, there's going to be all the various sides. But if they err to the side of caution, do you think anybody other than the Dallas Cowboys is going to be upset about that? Because they haven't done that in the past with previous domestic violence cases. So to pull it together here, the bottom line is that we think there's going to be a ruling today. We think there's going to be a suspension. And it becomes a question of how the league decides to frame it. If it's domestic violence, it's fairly black and white. It's 6 games. If the league decides to go a different route through personal conduct, it could be anywhere from 1 to 6 games. We don't know. And if the league decides to go domestic violence route, we may be looking at a prolonged story because I'm sure Ezekiel Elliott, Jerry Jones, their legal team, the Dallas Cowboys, they'll be very upset with this because they don't believe, in reading the investigation that the league has done for over a year, that there's enough in there to convict Ezekiel Elliott for a crime that he's never been charged or arrested for, by the way. Okay? And I'll give you more here. To the point of the history of the NFL with domestic violence. This is an investigation that started when Ezekiel Elliott was called in to be with the NFL for the first time last September. Last September. The next time he's called in is December. 3 months later. And the only thing that really changed in that time, well, there's other things. I don't know the details of the case, but I do know this. The Josh Brown incident surfaced between that time and October. And there was increasing criticism for all involved again. So, again, reading between the lines, the Zeke Elliott case that at first didn't appear as if it might amount to much. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. Took on a much more serious tone, I think, at that point in time. And it's continued to go on to the point where then Ezekiel Elliott and his people delayed turning over evidence, which delayed this case. And the league wants to make sure it gets it right. And here we are today, finally, August 11th. We believe there's going to be a ruling. And really, to me, the key question becomes, how does the league want to frame the evidence it has?
And so we'll wait and see. This is surprising. It's only surprising to me in the sense that this is not, I think, what we had been led to expect for the weeks and months leading up to this thing. But the last couple of days, you're starting to get this inkling. And there's Adam Schefter with the very latest telling you expect it potentially. Schefter, how would we characterize that? We expect it today. We know it will be today.
No, I don't know it will be today. I mean, I don't know how to say. I believe it's going to be today. Yeah. I believed it was going to be this week all along. I believed once we got past the first couple of days, it would be Thursday or Friday. It wasn't Thursday, so by the process of elimination, we think it'll be today.
We think it'll be today. All right, Schefter, thanks a million for the very latest there. That's Adam Schefter with us. Again, in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Mike and Mike presented by Shell Pennzoil. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Again, if they do decide to characterize this, to classify it, if you will, as a domestic violence incident, then the policy says it's 6 games.
Well, again, the policy says it's 6 games, but there is leeway to make it both more if it's egregious or less if they feel it deserves less. And we have seen that part of it. So while it says 6 as the headline, it can be less or more depending.
All right, we'll wait and see. Mikey will rejoin us. We got a lot left to do here.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Golic Jr. has rejoined us up here. We will have Adrian Wojnarowski.
Unbelievable.
How can we pronounce that and he can't?
I don't know.
How is that even possible?
Because it's so different from the way it's spelled, it confuses me.
Why can't you remember? Don't look at the spelling.
Wojnarowski. Because I always just call him Woj.
Yeah. Well, then just do that.
It is kind of a misnomer of a nickname, right?
It is, yes. Yes, it is.
I mean, there's nothing about it that actually fits together, but whatever. He's terrific, and there's a lot of basketball to talk about, and he'll join us in our studio coming up a little more than 10 minutes from now. But we wanted to get Mikey back for a couple more minutes just to see what some of the reaction was to the really good, heated, and interesting conversation we had about the Josh Rosen comments earlier this hour. MK tweets at us to the point you made earlier, Mikey. Myron Rolle, who Senior brought up, who was a Rhodes Scholar, also had coaches say he didn't take football seriously enough because school was his number one priority. How commonplace is that, and what, if anything, could change that?
I mean, make the financials of this less beneficial to the coaches and everyone involved. Make the stakes lower, because now it's a microwave for the coaches too. I mean, we've seen this play out in a number of places. You don't get that many years to prove it, so you're trying to rely on these kids, these 18 to 23-year-olds, to go out there and perform to keep you your job. Like, tell any one of those guys to make them prioritize school in that same way when it doesn't benefit them.
Myron Rolle, though, got to still play. He was good enough to, no matter when he came back, he was playing. It may have hurt him at the next level that we're talking about.
Well, and it may hurt guys that aren't Josh Rosen or Myron Rolle talents, who might be guys like me, who are borderline starters, guys that got to start, 17-odd games in their college career. It might hurt those guys a little bit more. I'm not saying that's what kept me off the field by any means, but I'm saying that perception doesn't help you feel good about going out there and pursuing those things.
This one, Williams says, Rosen is right. Football does not go with college academics. While GPA is not a measure, NFL combines numbers are. What I'll say to that is there's 128 Division I teams with 85 scholarships. That's 10,880 players. There's 333 players that get invited to the combine. If you want to give 8 players per team that have a pro day, that are a pro day on average, that's a little over 1,000, which is right around the 1% that make it to the next level. So we're talking about a small number here. I get it that 85% want to make it to the NFL, but at some point there has to be a responsibility on the student athlete to see those numbers, believe those numbers, and realize, I can work for this, but I need to work in the classroom as well.
It does, and I don't want to take away from the agency of guys involved. In a lot of places, especially like Notre Dame, you're given a lot of resources, and it's on you to make use of them. But at the same time, Josh Rosen, the other comment he made was, look what happens if you raise the SAT standards and what that would do to the college football product. He used Alabama as the example because they're the best team in college football, but how it would affect the product there and the guys that would prevent from going. So what does that tell you? They're sourcing from a talent pool of guys that wouldn't be able to qualify on their own. And so when you're sourcing from that pool, those are going to be the guys more likely to believe, I'm going to the NFL, especially when all along the way, what is recruiting but people telling you this is how great you are and can be? Right. Most of these kids have people around there telling them that all the time, and at some point that seeps in. Again, people like me, lucky enough to be grounded and have people behind them, and the guys that do, to say, listen, you've got to prioritize this because there's another way out. I heard Dominique Foxworth say this all the time. To some extent, to succeed at a high level in football, you've got to be kind of myopic. You've got to kind of have tunnel vision with a lot of these things and really put your effort to it. It's hard to put your utmost effort into both of these things. Something has to suffer, and it's usually academics.
Yet many have done it. I guess
many have gotten through with both, but you can't tell me you're putting equal effort into football and school. I don't believe that.
I understand that, but also the side of raising the SAT scores, and I love Nick Saban's answer. It's like, wait a minute, they're giving opportunities. I'll say it again. Right now, what's the alternative if you don't have a player with the ability to get in, even if it's for football, but then look at the doors it can open even if you don't play football, not only forgetting the academics, but the connections that you get by that school that can help you down the road. What's the alternative? Sorry, you don't make it. Go find something else to do.
And that's absolutely right, and that's why Josh said that's not a viable option, because no one on the football side of this would willingly undercut their own product for the sake of academics, which is a part of the core of this. Right. But also, you're right, you don't want to take opportunities away from these kids that desperately need it in a lot of senses. All you're saying is do the right things. Do help them make those connections. That was something even Notre Dame didn't do well when I was there on the team. They're doing it a lot better now of putting guys in front of alumni and helping them. Right. But that stuff, real life experience that you don't get being in summer school all year, being there all through the winter, those are the things we can improve on. Those are easy ways.
Right. There's a lot more in this, and it is part of a much bigger picture, but it was a really good discussion to have here, and it was good to have someone passionately taking the other side from Mikey. I agree with you. The establishment. The establishment doesn't have an interest in changing this because it's working really, really, really well for all the people who benefit by it and who stay there longer than 3 or 4 years. And those people, by definition, don't have the same vested interest in changing it because they're going to move on.
It's just like the NFL and the PA. Very similar like that.
A lot of these players benefit as well by going to college, even if they don't make it to the NFL.
We're going to break here. Mikey, thanks a million. Enjoy the shirt. We'll be right back.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't